This is Josh White with JW Math Tutoring. Today's video is going to cover Section 4, the calculator section of the October 2023 SAT QAS paper test. So let's go ahead and get started.
But life is a dream the calculus could never predict.
All right, so just before I begin, Section 4 of the October 2023 QAS from, again, the paper SAT given in the US. The calculator section, just a couple things to keep in mind. First of all, for a lot of these problems, I will show multiple methods to solve them. So because of that, the total time for this video to go through the section will most likely be longer than the time that you would be allowed to complete the test, if you were taking it in person. So just be aware of that. Okay, so starting with question number 1. Here you're just given a basic function, and all you're going to do for this is just essentially plug in the value for x of 10. And so when you do that, it's just going to be 260 times 10. Well, that's just 2,600 or 2,600. Correct answer is going to be letter A. Nothing else, and you can move on. All right, next question, you're given another function, but here, technically, it's actually the same problem. It's just worded differently. They just want to know, okay, when x is 5, what's the value of the function? Well, 5 plus 4 is just 9. So correct answer is, again, letter A, and you can just go ahead and move on. All right, now question 3, what's the equation of this line? So first thing I would notice is that the y-intercept right here is -1. In other words, the b value is -1. So right off the bat, we can get rid of answer choice B and answer choice D. Now notice it has a positive slope, therefore it has to be answer choice C. We don't actually have to figure out the slope. I mean, if you want to, just to confirm, you can count between 2 points on the graph. So like here you can count, no, it goes up 1, 2, 3, 4. So we go up 4 and then we go to the right 1. So up 4 would be positive 4 on top, right 1 would be positive 1 on the bottom. So the slope is just 4 over 1 or 4. Okay, but again, you can just use process elimination to notice that it has a y-intercept of -1 and a positive slope, therefore it has to be answer choice C. All right, for problem number 4 now, you have a graph. What's the minimum number of books in this drop? Well, it looks like the minimum point occurs right here, and the number of books, which is measured on the vertical or y-axis, is just 1. So correct answer, letter D, 1. That's it. Nothing more to it. Just reading a basic line plot. All right, for number 5, what's the positive solution to this equation? So if you notice, technically if you square both sides, that will get rid of the radicals, and then we have m squared equals 64 squared. Or you could also apply the square root that's given to both sides. And if you do that, you would just end up with basically m equals 64. So that's kind of like the shortcut or the easy way to think about it. I mean, if you did it, but if you squared both sides and got rid of the radical, now you should be able to look at it and say, okay, what number squared is equal to 64 squared? Well, it has to be 64 in order to have the same value, same expression on both sides. So however you want to look at it, however you want to think about it, the correct answer is going to be letter D. All right, now for 6, here you're given a table of values with some x and y values, and they want to know which of these graphs basically could match these points. So, okay, you can use the technique that I call point matching to just go through this and see, okay, which points are on the graph. So -4, 0. Does A go through -4, 0, which would be right here? Nope, eliminate it. Does, we'll go to whatever, we'll go across. Does C go through -4, 0? Yes, keep it for now. Does B go through it right here? Yep, keep it for now. Does D go through it? -4, 0? Nope, does not. Okay, so now we're down to 2 choices. So let's see, -1, 3. So negative 1, 3 for B would be like around, like roughly right here. So it looks like that one still works. We keep it. Negative 1, 3 on the graph of C would be like somewhere up here. Okay, that one doesn't work. Process of elimination, it has to be B. And that's it. That's the easiest way to do this, basically to figure this one out. Just point matching. We have the points. We go to the graph. We see which points are on the graph in the answer choices. Now, the one below that, problem number 7. Here we have a graph with some points on it. And basically wants to know, so when x is 4, right here, which of the following is closer to the predicted y value? So the predicted value is going to be the y coordinate on the line itself, this line of best fit. So you go to 4, we go up to the line. Well, basically you go across to y, and the value is 10. So the correct answer for this is just letter A, 10. Now, moving on to the next page. For number 8, you just have a basic probability problem. So, probability of selecting a child that has freckles, where, well, there are 2 that have freckles, so that would go on the top of our fraction, the probability of meeting the condition or the criteria, over the total number of children you could choose from, which is 8. So, 2 over 8, 1 over 4, that's just equal to 0.25. Correct answer is going to be letter A. Below that, problem number 9. Here we just have a basic proportion problem. So they give us the ratio of the diameters between Jupiter and Saturn, 1.2 to 1. So the diameter of Jupiter is 143,000 kilometers. What's the diameter of Saturn? So we could just set it up proportion up like this. The Jupiter values are on top. Saturn values are on the bottom. If you cross multiply, you'll just get 1.2x equals 143,000. Divide then both sides by 1.2. The answer is going to come out to 119,166.6 repeating, but this just rounds to 120,000 because they say in the question, what's the diameter to the nearest 10,000? So the 19 just rounds up to 20. So correct answer is letter C. Again, this is just a basic proportion that we set up. Problem number 10, you are given a scatter plot and a line of best fit again, and they want to know what's the equation of this line. So we already saw one question like this. So for this one, notice that the y-intercept is right here at 2. So b equals 2. So notice D is the only answer choice that has a y-intercept of 2. So you don't even need to bother finding the slope of this line. You can just eliminate all the other wrong answers right off the bat and confirm that it's D. Now, if you did want to confirm that the slope of the line is positive 1, you could just count it out. Notice it goes up 1, right 1. Up 1, right 1. So the slope is just positive 1 over positive 1, or 1. Y equals x plus 2, or as they've written it here, 2 plus x. For number 11, on the right side now, here we have a table of values, and they tell us it's a linear function, i.e. a line. And they want to know basically what's the equation of the line that goes through these points. So way I would do this first is probably notice that the y-intercept, the b value, is going to be right here at 13 because it has an x coordinate of 0. So all the answers already have 13, so that doesn't really help us eliminate any. So next, let's just figure out the slope. So remember, slope is change in y over change in x. So I'm going to do, it doesn't really matter here. Let's do 9 minus 13 for the y values, and then 10 minus 0 for the x values. So I get negative 4 over 10. That can be reduced to negative 2/5. So it looks like the equation line is going to be y equals negative 2/5 x plus 13. So correct answer is going to be letter D. Now, you could also, as well, do this by back solving. So you could take one of the not this first point, 013, because that's going to work in all of them. You have to pick one of these other 2 points, and you plug the x value in to each of the answer choices, and only one of them should give you the correct y value of either 9 if you pick the second point or 3 if you pick the third one. So like, let's just say we go with 10, like this is one we're going to check. So if we plug it into A, negative 4 times 10 is negative 40 plus 13. That is not positive 9. It's wrong. B, negative 2 times 10, negative 20 plus 13. Not positive 9. It's wrong. Negative 5 halves times 10. Now, if you can't do this in your head, you just do it on the calculator, but it's going to basically be, 2 and 10 cancel out. It's going to be negative 25 plus 13, not positive 9. It's wrong. And then if you check the last one, you'll see that this one does turn out to be correct because negative 2/5 times 10 will be negative 4, and negative 4 plus 13 is going to be positive 9. So you could also back solve this one as well. All right, in 12, you're just basically being asked to simplify or really combine like terms for this expression. So notice that 2 minus 2 is 0, so those cancel out. Negative x squared minus x squared is just negative 2x squared. So correct answer is going to be letter D. And that's it. No more work needed for that one. For 13, here you have a statistics related problem. So you have a data set, it has 100 values in it, and the values basically range from 30 to 125. So we got 30, blah, 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 a whole lot of values. Okay, then 80, then 125, at the top end. So now it says if you take out 125 and instead the values for your new data set are going to have everything from like 30 to 80. Okay, so it's just going to stop at 80, not going to have the 125 in it. Which of these statements must be true? So they're asking about either the mean or the median of the sets of data. So the thing is, technically, we don't know what's going to happen to the median because we don't know how the numbers between 30 and 80 are split up. In other words, we don't know if there's like, wherever it turns out that the median will be, we don't know if there's multiple values of that number or if it only, say, it only occurs once. So we can't determine anything about the median just based on what we're given. However, we can determine that the mean or the average will go down if you take out the 125. And that's just because if you think about it, it's like if you have a minimum value and the maximum value in a set of data and you find the average, and then you take away the maximum value, well, the average has to go down, it has to decrease. Just think about it in terms of like test scores. You take 5 tests in a class. If you take away your highest score, your overall average is going to go down or, decrease. So correct answer for this one is just going to be letter B. Okay, and the next page we have histogram, which applies to the next 2 questions. So on 14, what percentage of trees have a trunk diameter less than 6 inches? Well, that is just this bar right here. So there are 5 of them. And that would be out of the total number of trees, of which there are 95. I mean, you could add up all the values from all the bars, but they tell us right here the data for 95 of these trees, is summarized in the chart. So we already know the total is going to be 95. So just 5 divided by 95, that comes out to basically 0.0526, or in other words, 5.26%, and it just gets rounded to 5.3%. Correct answer is letter B. Now, for 15, it says which is the following is a possible median value. So there are 95 total values in terms of tree trunk measurements for diameters. So if you divide 95 by 2, you get 47.5. Then if you round that up, that turns into 48. That means the 48th value is where the median value is going to occur. So what we do now is we start at either end and we count until we get to 48 values. So for example, if we count, cumulatively, so we've got 5 and then we add 10 more for the 6 to 12 bar. So now we're at 15 and then we add 30 more. So in the 12 to 18 bar, we've gone through 45 total tree values. Then we add 25 more. So now at the 18 to 24 in that range, we've now hit 70 total measurements. So the 48th value has to be somewhere in here between 18 to 24. Therefore, the correct answer, the only possible value it could be is 20, because 20 is the only number here that's between 18 and 24 for the possible median. All right, for number 16, here we have basically kind of like a ratio equation essentially. So you have three different candidates running for this position. You know the total number of votes, 14,000, 705. And you know the ratio of the votes between candidates for the first and second candidate was 4-1, and the ratio of the votes for the third candidate was approximately 100 to 13. So there's multiple ways you could do this. First, I'll show you kind of like the traditional way, and then after that, I'll show you how you could back solve it. So we know the ratio for candidate 1 to candidate 2. Candidate 1 to candidate 2, okay, is 4-1. And we know the ratio for candidate 1 to candidate 3 is 100 to 13. So what we have to do here is now basically get both of these ratios to have like the same value or the same number for candidate 1. And then we can combine them all and add them all up to the total of the 14,705. So in other words, 4 votes for candidate 1 to 1 vote for candidate 2 is the same as 100 votes for candidate 1 to 25 votes for candidate 2. I just basically multiplied the top and bottom by 25. So now that you have the same top number in both fractions, and we have candidate 1 on the top in both, now we can say, okay, for candidate 1, there were 100 votes, proportionately times some scale factor. And then for candidate 2, we have 25 votes times some scale factor. And for candidate 3, we have 13 votes times some scale factor. And now you can go ahead and solve this equation. It's going to be 14,705 equals 438x. And then if you divide, x is going to come out to be 106.56. And now they want to know the number of votes received by the first candidate. So that's this part right here. That's just x times 100. So you multiply this by 100, and then that's just going to turn it into 10,656. So the correct answer is going to be letter C. Now, if you wanted to, you could also back solve this. So I'm not going to go through all the answer choices, but I will show you how you could confirm that answer choice C is correct. So basically what you're doing is you would take like answer choice C, the 10,656. It's the number of votes for candidate 1, okay? So that's candidate 1 votes. Candidate 3 votes, we don't know, but we know the ratio of these two votes has to be 100 to 13. So now what you would do is you would go ahead and you would solve this for the number of votes that candidate 3 would get. So notice basically if you just cross multiply this, you're going to get, the 10,656 times 13 and then divide that by 100. All right, so if we do that out, $1,385.28. So candidate 1, we have 10,656. Candidate 3, we have 1385. I mean, you can't really have 0.28 of a votes, but whatever. We'll just leave it in there for now. Now, we have to use the same ratio again and figure out how many candidate 2 would have gotten. So we set up another proportion, and it's basically 10,656 over x, candidate two's votes, and then 4 to 1. So if you cross multiply this, you're going to get 4x equals 10,656 divided by 4. And that's going to tell us how many votes candidate 2 would have gotten. 2664. So now, if we add these three values up, so we take the 2664, I'm just going to round it to 1385, and then add in the original 10,656 from the answer choice that we're checking. If these three values equal to 14,705, which they do, then we know we have the correct answer. So again, that's how you could back solve it, by picking an answer choice for candidate 1's votes, finding what candidate 2 and 3 would have to be based on the ratios you're given in the problem, and then you add them up and see if they equal 14,705. It doesn't appear to be faster than the way that I solved it, but if you're having trouble setting up the equation or can't get the equation, this is just an alternate way that you could solve the problem. All right, next, let's take a look at 17 here. So this person went on a bike ride. During the first mile, he rode at some speed. After the first mile, he increased his speed by 100%. Which of the following represents the speed he rode his bike after the first mile in terms of S? Okay, so first I will show you how to do this by picking numbers, and then I'll explain just kind of like the theory behind it. So let's say during the first mile, his speed S was 10 miles per hour. Okay, then he increased his speed by 100%. Okay, so that means in the second mile, the speed would now be 20 miles per hour. Because you'd say, okay, 100% of 10 miles per hour, 100% as a number is just 1, so 1 times 10 is just 10. So if you increase it by 100, that means you increase it by 10 miles per hour. So that's how I get 10 plus 10 equaling 20. So now, which of these expressions, when I plug in 10 for S, is equal to 20? A is 10, B is 11, C is 15, D is 20. Okay, looks like correct answer is going to be letter D, 2S. Basically, the theory behind this is that when you increase a value by 100%, you're essentially doubling the value. That's why the answer is 2S. Okay? Because you're starting with some amount, 100% of that is the same amount, and then when you increase it by that, when you add them both together, you now have 2 of, that original starting amount. So again, doubling something is the same as increasing it by 100%. All right, in 18, which of these has the greatest standard deviation? So standard deviation is how far apart the values in a set of data are spread from each other. So are they very close? So like B has a very low standard deviation because they're all clustered around between 3 and 5. The correct answer for this is going to be letter D. This is the one that has the furthest standard deviation because you have values spread out all the way from 1 up to 8, and with some in the middle. So correct answer is going to be D. Now for 19, they give you some information here about students that took a survey or blah, blah, blah whatever. How many students agree with this proposed change? So it tells us that 62% of students taking the class agree that the practice time should be increased. So they surveyed 50 people. Therefore, this question is just asking for what is 62% of 50? Because notice they didn't ask how many students in the class do they estimate, but they said how many of the students surveyed agree with the change. So 62% of the 50 students surveyed, just 0.62 times 50 just comes out to 31. Correct answer is letter B. Now for D, it says which of the following populations can the results be extended to? So if you notice here, when they did the survey, they surveyed a random sample, okay, of 50 students from the 250 students which are taking a driver education class. Okay, so 50 is a subset of the 250, and the 250 are only those taking the class. So that is the largest group that the results can be generalized to. So the correct answer is D. You cannot generalize it to any high school because this was only from one specific high school. You cannot generalize it to, students even taking a driver's education class at any high school because I just said the survey was only from one high school. And you can't even do it to the school in general, which is answer choice C, because again, this is only for it was only done on a sample of students taking a driver education class. So that large group of 250 is the largest population you can generalize the survey to. All right, in 21, here you have a quadratic equation, and they want to know which one has one distinct real solution. So there's multiple ways you could do this. One method, of course, is you can check the discriminant, which is the b squared minus 4ac part of the quadratic formula. If you do that and you plug in the values for A, B, and C, you're going to see that the correct answer here is letter D, because that's going to be negative 8 squared minus 4 times 1 times 16. So you're going to get 64 minus 64. And when the discriminant, the b squared minus 4ac is equal to 0, that's when you have exactly one real solution. An alternate way that you could do this is you could go on the graphing calculator, and if you graph out these answer choices, you can look for the answer choice which will only have one x-intercept. In other words, you can look for the answer choice which will only touch the x-axis and not cross it multiple times, or not cross it at all. So I just graphed out answer choice D, and you can see here, there's only one x-intercept. There's only one spot or one x value where it has a y value of 0. The others are either going to have multiple x-intercepts, meaning 2, or no x-intercepts, meaning they don't cross it at all. So there's multiple ways that you could figure this one out, either again algebraically or by using the graphing calculator. Now, continuing top of the next page, question number 22. Here you have a situation where basically it's a word problem, but they give you the equation here of the situation, of the word problem that's going on. So there are many ways you can do this. The easiest way is just to notice that 2x plus 4y equals 100 will give you an x-intercept of 50 because you just plug in 0 for y, and so that just drops out, 2x equals 100, x equals 50. So process of elimination, which of these graphs have x-intercept of 50? A does, keep it. C does not, eliminate it. B does not, eliminate it. And D does. So keep it. Then you can check the y-intercept. So do the same thing where you plug in 0 for x and then solve for y. So this whole first term is going to drop out, and you're just going to get y equals 25. So which of these lines has a y-intercept of 100? Excuse me, not 100, 25. Obviously, it's going to be A, so we can eliminate this, and the correct answer is going to be A. You could also go ahead and you could put this in slope-intercept form, and you could like find what the slope is, and you could match it up that way. You could also graph the line out, and then look at the graph on your calculator compared to these graphs here. But I think it's just so much easier to find the x-intercept, find the y-intercept. Basically, what you're doing is point matching, right? You're plugging in 0 for x and then 0 for y. You're finding what those specific points are from the equation, and then you go to the graph and you find which graph has those points. All right, below that we have question 23 deals with a rectangle. So we're told that we have a rectangle with a length of 12, width of 2.5. Then we also have a right triangle, which has a base of 10. So if we just sketch this out, and we're also told the area of the rectangle, which is x, is 3 times the area of the right triangle. So what does the height of the right triangle have to be? Okay, so a couple things. We take 12, the length, multiplied by 2.5, which is the width. When we multiply those two values together, we should get 30. That's the area of the rectangle. Now, they also tell us again, this area is 3 times the area of the right triangle. So that means, so 30 is equal to 3 times area of right triangle. So what does the area of the right triangle have to be? Well, if you just solve this for A, you can see it clearly has to be 10. So the overall area of the right triangle, which we're going to use 1/2 base times height to figure out, has to be 10. So the base we don't know, excuse me, base we do know, it's the height that we don't know. The base we know is 10. So if you just plug this in now, 1/2 times 10 is just 5. So what does the height have to be in order to make the overall area 10? Well, height just has to equal 2. Divide both sides by 5 and you get h equals 2. So the correct answer is letter B. Also, just to note, you could back solve this one as well. So once you figured out that the area of the rectangle is 30, you could then go to the answer choices and say for the triangle, okay, 1/2 times 10 times 1. Does that equal 10? Because you still do have to figure out that the area of the triangle is going to be, 10, because the rectangle area is 3 times it. But you could plug them in and just figure it out that way rather than actually setting up and solving the equation. But it's really not that much different. Okay, so now for question number 24 at the bottom of the page. You're told about these different species of tigers. So this one is a little tricky, but it's actually not going to be that difficult. All right, you have 4,000 tigers total. 450 were Amur, and some unknown number were Bengal tigers. Okay, then you also have 3 other subspecies. They don't tell us the names, but they tell us there's 5 total subspecies. There's Amur, Bengal, and then whatever 3 others. So it says which of the inequalities represents how many there could be that are Bengal. So we've got 4,000 total. We take away the 450 Amur. All right. Now, if you do that, that is going to give you, let's see, we can do it on the calculator, but it's going to be 3,550, okay, remaining for the 4 other types. All right. So, excuse me. The minimum number of Bengal tigers could obviously be 1. Like in other words, there could be just one of them and that's it. The maximum number, though, could be 3,000. It's going to be 3,400, 547, 3,547, and here's why. If there is one each of the other 3 unnamed subspecies, okay, so you take those away from the total, that leaves you with, at most, 3,547 that could be Bengal for the maximum. So the inequality is going to be x is basically going to be between 1 and 3,547 inclusive. All right, so that's going to be it's going to be letter C. That is how many Bengal tigers there could be in this group of 4,000 total. Now, at the top of the next page, for question 25, you're given this triangle, you're told two of the side lengths of it, and they want to know of the piece of information listed there, which of those is enough to prove whether DEF is a right triangle or not. So I'm actually going to talk about two first, because if you know the length of DF, then you can basically use the Pythagorean theorem, or there are some theorems in geometry which are basically like kind of like the reverse of the Pythagorean theorem. And so, for example, if this was 4, well, then you check, 3 squared plus 4 squared equals 5 squared. And that checks out. You get 25 equals 25. That means it's a right triangle. If it's any number other than 4, it will not be a right triangle because when you go to check it out, you're either going to see, say, it's like 3 here. You'd have 3 squared plus 3 squared, and you compare that to 5 squared, which is 25, and that would be 18. That would be less than 25. And then if this number, let's say, happened to be 6 instead, then you would technically be comparing 3 squared plus 5 squared to 6 squared. So here you would have 9 plus 25, 34, less than 36. Okay, that's not a good choice because that's the same. So let's instead say it was 5 again. Okay, so now we'd actually be comparing 3 squared plus 5 squared to 5 squared, so 34 would be greater than 25. Okay, so it turns out that when the two smallest sides are greater than the largest side, it's an acute triangle, and when the two smallest sides, the squares of them added up together, are less than the square of the largest side, it ends up being an obtuse triangle. So you can determine by knowing the length of side DF whether the triangle is a right triangle by using the Pythagorean theorem, or basically it's the converse of it. Additionally, you could also do basic trig. Or actually, no, you couldn't do basic trig because you don't know it's a right triangle. So this is the only method you could use to check 2. So we know 2 is correct, so we can get rid of this and we can get rid of this. Now for 1, this one is very tricky. The only method that well, let me start off by saying, okay, if this was 90 degrees, if you were given this was 90 degrees, obviously it's a right triangle. Okay, you can prove it, whatever. However, if you're given some value other than 90, like say this is 50 degrees, okay? Now, looking at the picture, you probably think, oh, well, obviously it's not a right triangle because, 5 is EF, 5 is the largest side, and DF, side down here, has to be less than it. So therefore, it can't be 90. It can't be a right triangle. However, the problem is we don't know that this picture is drawn to scale. They don't tell us that it is drawn to scale, but they also don't tell us that it isn't drawn to scale. So we can't make any assumptions about that. So the point is, if you're given an angle here, say it's 50, is it possible that this is a 90-degree angle up here, in which case it would be a right triangle? you know, or is it possible that instead this angle up here is 70 degrees, in which case it is not a right triangle? So the point is, if you're only given one angle and it's angle D, can you definitively prove whether or not this is a right triangle? It turns out the answer is yes, you can, and the correct answer is C. But the only way that I could figure out how you would do it is technically using the law of sines. So for example, if you were given this angle as 50 degrees, you could set up the law of sines uh, to find out what this angle is. Basically sine x over 3 equals sine 50 over 5. And then go ahead and calculate that. And then once you get the value for x, if it's 90 degrees, okay, it's a right triangle. If it's not 90, well, based on what it is, that would then tell you if the remaining angle is 90 or not. And then you would definitively determine how many um, uh, basically whether it's a right, the measure of each angle, which is the right triangle or not. So, yes, if you know the measure of angle D, you can prove whether the triangle is a right triangle or not. But the only way that I found you could do that um, is by using the law of sines. I could not find another method or another reason which could justify answer choice one uh, being, you know, part of the correct answer to this problem. All right, now at the bottom of the page, 26, here we have an exponential equation. So basically, you're starting with 100 people seeing the sequence, okay, and 87 of them will recall it immediately after seeing it. And then the number is going to continue to decrease, okay, by 14% of the number the previous second for each additional second that passes. And then I just want to know what's the model for this. So 87 is your starting value. So that's going to be in front. So right away you can get rid of A. And now a 14% decrease. When we're talking about that for an exponential equation, what that means is it's like an exponential equation is like 1 plus or minus r, where r is like your growth rate or your decline or decrease rate. So in this case, the decrease rate is 14% or 0.14. So what that means is the value inside the parentheses should be 0.86. So the correct answer for this one is going to be letter C. And you could also do this one basically by back solving it. So like you choose a time, excuse me, you choose a time like say whatever, 3 seconds. And then you'd have to take the 87 and you'd have to decrease that by 14%. So like 87 times 0.14 and subtract that. And then that new number times 0.14 and subtract it. New number by 0.14 and subtract it. And then that value you get, you would then check against all of these answer choices, plugging in 3 for t. Okay, and if you do that, you'll show that C is the correct answer, the one that works out properly. All right, now for 27, you're given one linear equation and you're told that it's part of a system which has no solution. So which one could be the other one? So hopefully hopefully you're aware that when you have a system of linear equations, basically if it is no solution, the two equations, if they're both set up in the same format, will have uh, the same multipliers from the two variables, from one variable to another, but a different multiplier from the number that's alone, say, on the right side. So these equations are basically in standard form. So what I mean by that is, okay, if we take the answer choice A, okay, and I'm just going to write the original equation down here. Notice that to get from -6 to +6, you multiply by -1. And to get from 7 to -7, you multiply by -1. So far, x and y, same multiplier, same scale factor. But to get from -6 to 0, you have to multiply by 0. So the x and y, again, have the same multiplier, but the number has a different multiplier. Those are the conditions. That's the criteria for a no solution system of linear equations. So the correct answer for this one is going to be letter A. And you could go through and you could check the rest of them. I'm not going to bother with the ones that have the fractions, but I will point out, like for D, the multiplier for both for both the variables and the number on the right is +1. So it's like +1 for all three of them. That means that D technically is an equation that would make the system have infinite solutions. Okay, if you graphed it out, it'd be the same line twice. Now, another method you could use to solve this is you could graph the lines, on the calculator, but it's going to take a fair amount of effort because you have to rearrange them and put them in slope-intercept form, so I wouldn't recommend that. You could also, too, go ahead and you could take the original equation with one of the answer choices and you could try to solve it using matrix properties. The only issue is that technically if you do that, you get an error when it's either no solution or infinite solution. So basically for both A and D, it would give you an error. And then lastly, something else you can always do if you forget about the multipliers and the scale factors, you can just take the problem and you can go ahead and try and solve it. So for example, I take the original equation and I take answer choice A, and if I were to try to solve this, okay, I would notice, all right, the x's are already opposite, so let's just add them and cancel. Here we add them and cancel, we get 0. On the right side, we add them, we get -6. Okay, 0 is never equal to -6. That's a clue or that's a hint that, yes, this is a system of equations which has no solution. So you can always try to solve the system of equations as well to determine if it's, one solution versus no solution versus infinite. All right, next up, problem number 28 below it. So you have this tree, they know its diameter, they give us this equation right here that tells us um, you know, what its diameter is X years after it was planted or whatever, blah, blah, blah. Okay. And they want to know what's the best interpretation of this 0.64x in the context. So notice 2 is the starting amount, right? It had 2 inches trunk diameter when it was planted. Then it grew for some period of time, X years, and then after X years, it was measured. The trunk diameter is now 22.4. So it's like this is the final amount, and 2 is the initial or the starting amount. So what does this 0.64x equal? Well, that's just how much the trunk diameter increased by over those X years. Okay? That's how much you added to the 2 to get 22.24. So the correct answer is going to be letter A. All right. Now, if they'd asked about 0.64, that's how much it would be. That's how much it would have changed or increased, for each year. But they're not asking about that. They're asking about, the 0.64x, which is, again, represents the total increase in the diameter, um, basically, the X years after it was planted. All right, move on to the next page at the top, number 29. So here we have a quadratic function. It is graphed for us, and they give us the actual equation for the graph. They want to know an equivalent form that shows the maximum value as a constant or coefficient. So I think the easiest way to do this one is to notice that the maximum value is going to occur here at the vertex. So B is the only equation that's actually given in vertex form. All the others are in some random form. So one shortcut method is to just recognize that and recognize that that's got to be the answer. But the other thing that you could notice is that the vertex is symmetrical with respect to the x-intercepts. It's halfway between it. So if you take 8, you take 32, you add them together, that's 40. You divide that by 2, that's going to be 20. That means the x-coordinate, or the h value for your vertex, is going to be 20. So then all you have to do is you take 20 and you plug it into, and notice that corresponds right here, x minus h, x minus 20. Take 20, plug it into this original function and evaluate it. Just do it on the calculator. And then when you do that and work it out, you should get 144 as the value. And so then that'll just confirm, okay, which one of these has 144, which the maximum value for a quadratic function is the k value. So which of these has 144 listed as a constant or a coefficient? Well, it's only answer choice B right here. So that has to be the correct answer. Now, a third way you could do this is you could also use the graphing calculator. So I'll just show you real quick. You could go to graph this function. All right, let's see if I can just edit this one. So as it's given, we're going to have to adjust the window for it. But if we go ahead and, okay, first I'll just graph it, then I'll adjust the window. Okay, and we don't see anything. We should see 80 though, so that was a bit concerning, but whatever. We'll bump. We'll just keep this at, this is 0. We'll bump this up to 40. And for our Y max, we'll just, whatever, bump it up to 200 just to be safe. All right, nothing so, oh, the problem is there needs to be, sorry, there's no X here. That's why the graph is not showing up. Okay, there we go. So an alternate way to do this would be to get the graph on the calculator, then go to the calculate menu, second trace, go to maximum, left bound, just move a little bit to the left of where the maximum is, right bound, move a little bit to the right, guess, move it as close to the maximum as possible, hit enter. Okay, right there, y equals 144. That is the maximum value, and then you just look at the answer choices, which one has 144, and so that's an alternate way you could get this problem just by using the calculator. All right, for number 30, there are multiple ways you could do this one as well. So one way is to just go ahead and solve this. So if you cross multiply, you're going to get 9 times x minus 3 equals 7 times x minus 3, or 9x minus 27 equals 7x minus 21, and you get 2x, excuse me, not 21x, equal to 6. Add 27 to both sides, or x equals 3. Now you have to be careful. They don't want the value of x. Again, notice they're asking for the value of x minus 3. So x minus 3 is equal to 3 minus 3, which is just 0. Therefore, which of these pairs of numbers is 0 between? Well, it's obviously between -1 and +1. So correct answer is going to be letter B. So that's one way you could do it. You could also technically graph out each of these lines on the calculator and see where they intersect and solve and basically just solve it that way. And that would give you, again, the value for x, but you would have to also then remember to subtract 3 from it in order to get 0. All right, for 31, we have a density question. And so all you're doing really for this one, again, oh, and here we're starting the grid ends. Density is just mass over volume. And if you don't know that, they tell you here with the units, grams per cubic centimeter. So the mass or the grams goes on top. The volume, cubic centimeters, goes on the bottom. So it's just 200 divided by 10, cancel out a 0, cancel out 0. It's just going to be 20. So correct answer here, you just grid in 20, and that's it. Up the next page, 32. Here you have basically a kind of proportion type problem. The ratio of blue to green is 3 to 2. So 3 blue, 2 green. Blue on top, green on the bottom. Now we use 120 blue and we use 20N green. So now you can just go ahead and solve this proportion. I mean, if you see it, hopefully you notice that like this times 40 is what's, how you get that. So if you do 2 times 40, notice that's 80. So 20N technically is equal to 80. Therefore, N has to be equal to 4. That's your correct answer. But if you didn't see that, just go ahead and cross multiply it. 60N equals 240. Divide by 60, divide by 60, N equals 4. Okay, so however you do it, correct answer is going to be positive 4. 33, system of linear equations. They ask you to solve it for y. It's very simple because notice the x's are already opposite, so you can just add down the columns. Cancel. 2y equals 12, y equals 6. Of course, you could also graph these on the calculator and use the intercept function. You could also technically set them equal to each other and then like solve for x, but that just creates more work because they want to know the value of y. So there's really no reason to do substitution. Just do elimination as it's given, and you can just get y equals 6, with minimal work. All right, next up, 34. So for this one, you have a circle. It's got 3 regions. They give you the area of each region, and they want to know what's the probability of selecting a point that does not lie in region 2. So the probability of not region 2 is basically, what is the probability of it is in region 1 or 3. So region 1 is 4 pi. It could be in that area. Region 3 is 16 pi. I'm just going to ignore the units. And then overall, the total area you have to choose from is 4 pi plus 12 pi plus 16 pi. So the probability is just going to be equal to 20 pi over 32 pi. The pi's cancel out. 20 over 32 reduces to 5 over 8. So you could grid that in, or you could put the decimal equivalent 0.625. So either of those would be acceptable answers for this problem. On to the last page. Now, problem 35. So you're told this population 1980, you're told how much it's going to grow each year. You're told what the population was in 2015, and they want to know the difference between actual and what was predicted. So basically, if you think about the model for predicted, it's 4.44. I'm doing everything in terms of billions, but I'm not, not going to write that. Plus 0.076 times x, where x is the number of years after 1980. So in 2015, if you subtract it, from 1980, basically 35 years will have gone by. So in other words, the predicted model, that's what I'm doing first, predicted, would say 0.076 billion people per year times 35 years. Add that to the 4.4 we started with, we would end up with approximately 7.1 billion. And you're comparing that to the actual, which is 7.35 billion. So what's the difference? Well, just 7.35 minus 7.1. So it's just 0.25. And they want it in terms of billions. So you just leave it 0.25. So you could grid that in as a correct answer, or you could also do it as its equivalent fraction, which is 1/4. And that's it. That's all you need to do for that problem. All right, for 36, we have another exponential function here. And it's talking about basically, essentially, this is working on half-life. So it says, how much time does it take for this mass to decrease to 5 picograms? So basically, 10 is the initial amount because that's the number in front here. So if you notice, if you plug in 5 for m of t, because that's the mass we're trying to get after whatever period of time. Okay, so we have 10, and then we have 1/2 to the t over 5730. So now, if you divide by 10, okay, notice you get 1/2 equals 1/2 t to the 5730. So in order for these two sides of the equation to be equal, this on the left side is like 1/2 to the first, right? In order for the two equations to be equal, like t over 5730 has to just equal 1. In other words, you set the exponents equal to each other. And then if you solve that for t, well, t just has to equal 5,730. You just basically multiply by that on both sides. So this is the correct answer. Essentially, it's asking for like how long is one half-life, and really that number comes right from here. But if you don't know that because you haven't taken chemistry or whatever, like don't remember that, that's fine. Just plug the 5 in for m, and then when you go to solve for t, again, notice you get 1/2 on both sides, so we have the same base, and now you can set the exponents equal to each other. All right, 37. This is probably the trickiest question on the test. So the way I would think about this, or go through this, is as follows. Basically, just trying to find there my solution. Okay. Notice that first of all, this line is y equals ax, meaning its y-intercept is 0. So what that means is, technically, if you take any point on the line, like just whatever, pick this random point right here, okay? It's like 800,000 is the y value, and the x value is, say, like, I don't know, 750,000, okay? If you start at 0, 0, and then you go over and up, like you're going to go over 750,000 and then you're going to go up 800,000. So notice the x coordinate and the y coordinate are the same numbers that calculate the slope. You know what I'm saying? In other words, the slope is really the y coordinate for any point over the x coordinate for any point. All right. The reason I mention that is because that's what you need to know in order to solve this problem. So, okay, the next thing is they tell us a point lies above this line if and only if blah, 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 an increase in housing units from 2010 to 2018 greater than 7%. All right, percent increase, if you think about the formula, it is new minus old divided by old. And then, of course, you multiply by 100%, but whatever, we can ignore that. So new here would be the 2018 value. Old would be the original 2010 value, and then we divide it by the original 2010. And so we're told that if you are above this line, this is greater than 7%. Okay, so whatever, I'll just use 7%. We can ignore the 100%, that doesn't really matter. All right, so now notice what happens here. Let me just scroll up so we can see the full equation. Yeah, there's the full equation. Okay, so now I'm going to scroll down. If you split this up into two parts, you get the 2018 over the 2010 minus the 2010 over 2010. And again, that's greater than the 7%, or since I'm ignoring the 100%, I'll just turn it into a decimal, make it 0.07, okay? Now, the 2010 over 2010, that's just 1, because that's just whatever number 2010 over itself. That's the same number over itself. So that just really simplifies to 1. And now you can add it to the other side. So what you end up with is the 2018 value, housing value, over the 2010 housing value is greater than 1.07. However, notice that this fraction on the left side right here, 2010 over 2018 over 2010, this is just the y coordinate value over the x coordinate value. In other words, this is the slope that I was talking about at the beginning of the problem. So what this really basically means is, like, if you're above this line, then your slope value, your m value, is greater than 1.07, because the 2018 housing value with your y coordinate divided by the 2010 housing value, your x coordinate, is just your slope. It's the same thing. If you just any point, the y over the x, because it goes through 0, 0, is your slope. That's why the answer to this question for A, or the slope, is 1.07. So that's what you would grid in. Now, technically, on the answer key for the test, they also have 107 divided by 100, but you don't have enough spaces to fill that in, so I don't know why they list that. Like 1.07 is really realistically the only thing you could grid in to figure this out. All right, now for the last question, number 38. You are told about a circle and given its center and radius, and then they give you its equation, but they give you a constant. They want to know what that is. So basically, you can write the equation of circle in standard form, which would be x minus 4 squared plus y plus 5 squared equals 2 squared. Now I'm just going to turn this into 4. And now they say this is equal to x squared minus 8x plus y squared plus 10y plus c equals 0. So if you just expand this out, x squared minus 8x plus 16, technically it's FOIL, but I'm just kind of doing it all in my head because I already know how it's going to simplify. Y squared plus 5y, 10y plus 25. All right, and now equal to 4. So now if you add these two together, 16 and 25 is 41, and you subtract 4 over, you're going to get 37 on the left side. Again, I add 16 and 25 to get 41, and then I do minus 4 on both sides, 37. Notice the other parts all match. Okay? Match, 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 match. So C has to be 37, and that is the correct answer to this problem. So that was the calculator section. Let me just actually scroll up so we can, sorry, show the work here so it's not hidden by the calculator. There's the full work for the last one in terms of getting the 41 and just subtracting the 4 and turning it into 37. So like I said, those are all the problems to the October 2023 QAS, the calculator part, section 4 of the math section, the last basically paper-based QAS in the United States. Have any questions or comments, please leave them below. Otherwise, if you like this video, please do give it a thumbs up. Of course, subscribe to my channel and sign up for notifications as well. Also, check out the solutions to the no calculator section of this test. And there will be a lot more digital SAT content posted soon as well.